Yo, it's your boy Schlosser here and welcome to another build video. Today featuring a little more of a basic build, a build that doesn't require much gear, but it also doesn't scale very well. So if you get better gear, this build will not be good anymore. But for someone who's fresh 60, this is a great build, because it doesn't require much of you except for a few things. So this is the elemental survival warrior build that I've been using on Laughing Skull the last few weeks, and it's not dealing much weapon damage, but it's the idea behind is that you just use a lot of procs. Even if they don't deal much damage, you just use a lot of procs that are proccing off your weapons. So, for example, I have here my 2x of the Deep Woods. These are pretty cheap to get, they're just a few gold on the auction house and they're pretty strong. And as you see, I have a fire weapon enchanted, then I have a Frostbrand on it, and I have life-stealing RE on it. I just took the lowest level of life-stealing RE and just put it on my weapons, because the damage doesn't change much, but it's still some decent damage, especially like the life-stealing RE is dealing 30 damage and heals me for 30, so it's pretty decent actually. And the weapon itself also has a chance on hit, blast the target for 90 to 126 nature damage, which also gets increased by your Storm Strike, which increases the nature damage spells that you do by 20%, so those are increased. So the whole idea behind the build is that you just keep hitting your enemy with those weapons and just deal damage through your procs, because as you see, my attack power is not very high. The build is not about attack power, the build is not about weapon damage. The build is just about proccing special effects from your weapons that don't require any attack power or spell power. Just some good base damage. And therefore the gear that you wear, no matter how shitty it is, as long as your weapons that you can ensure, as long as your weapons have those things on them, just fire weapon enchant is super cheap, the life-stealing RE is not hard to get, and the procs itself is pretty good. And if you can't afford Axe of the Deep Woods, there's also some other weapons, like for example the weapon I used before, the Blade of the Wretched, where I put fire weapon on it and it has a chance on hit, corrupt the target, causing 90 shadow damage over 3 seconds. Or for example Ripsaw, fire weapon on it and it has a chance on hit, wounds the target for 75 damage. That's just some basic weapons with some procs on it that have some decent damage. Other weapon, for example, from Temple, super easy to get. 4 bosses in Temple drop this weapon, and it's Fire Breather. Hurls a fireball, deals 70 fire damage and additional 9 damage over 6 seconds. So either one of these weapons are fine. Just put fire weapon on it from your friendly neighborhood enchanter. It's super cheap. Yeah, that's the build. You just use procs to deal damage to your enemy. We also have Lightning Shield with the Static Shock, so Lightning Shield also procs on your weapon swings, and is also increased by Storm Strike, but we're getting into that. So let's take a look at the spells and talents real quick. First off, in Beastmaster we have Aspect of the Wild, because I'm actually going for some high spell resistance on this build. As you see, we have 105 nature resistance and 105 shadow resistance. It really helps a lot because you're resisting a lot of spells, and that comes in handy with another talent that I'm gonna show you soon. Then in Arcane Mage we have Counterspell, Blink and Mage Armor. Mage Armor we simply take for another 15 magic resistance to all the spell schools. Then in Holy Paladin I'm currently using Seal of Wisdom. I was switching around between Seal of Wisdom, Seal of Light and Seal of Justice. I'm not sure which one is the best choice. It really depends on what you want. Do you want to have more mana? Do you want to have a little more healing? Or do you want to stun your enemies with your seal? So that's up to you guys to decide which seal you want. Then in Protection Paladin we have Hand of Freedom, Shadow Resistance, Aura and Divine Shield. In Retribution we have Judgment of Justice, just to prevent enemies from fleeing or activating sprints like Blazing Speed. Then in Discipline Priest we have Inner Fire, because we, as said, this build doesn't require much gear, so we are basically running around with really low armor, and that's why I integrated Inner Fire into the build, just so I have some more armor against melees. Then in combat we have Evasion, just a good cooldown against melees. Then in Enhancement we have Lightning Shield and Frostbrand Weapon. In Restoration Shaman we have Healing Wave. In Affliction Warlock we have Life Tap and Death Coil. I was thinking a lot about adding Curse of Elements to the build, simply because most of our damage is magical and we're using damage from multiple schools, so Curse of Elements would be really strong. And if I think about it, like, Curse of Elements really belongs into this build. Like, I don't know what to give up for Curse of Elements right now, but if you guys want to deal a little more damage with this build, Curse of Elements is definitely the way to go. Reducing enemy resistances and increasing your damage by 10%, it's pretty good, and should be in the build. Then in Demonology Warlock we have Demon Skin, just armor and some increases the healing by 5%, just very useful. In Arms Warrior we have Charge, in Fury Warrior we have Intercept and Berserker Rage. Then we go to the talents. In Resto Druid we have Natural Perfection, it just gives us some spell crit, but mainly it gives us a lot of damage reduction. Then in Arcane Mage we have here Magic Absorption, gives you resistances, and every time you fully resist the spell you get 2% of your mana restored, and with our resistances we are resisting quite a few spells, so that also not only are we avoiding the damage or the debuff that they're trying to put on us, it also gives some pretty good mana back. Then we have improved Counterspell and improved Blink. In Fire Mage we have Blazing Speed. Blazing Speed is just super strong, removing slows and giving you a sprint every time you are attacked. You have a chance. Then in Holy Paladin we have Enlightened Judgments. We basically use this for a 4% hit rating. Then in Retribution Paladin we have Pursuit of Justice, just movement speed, and Judgment of the Wise. Judgment of the Wise is really necessary because we're spending a lot of mana, and this just gives us a lot of mana back. In Discipline Priest we have Focused Will, 1 point, just for the maximum value of the buff. In Shadow Priest we have Psychic Horror, it's just a 3-second Horrify and also disarms your enemy. In Subtlety Robe we have Hemorrhage, just a filler, and Shadow Step for additional mobility. In Elemental Shaman I currently have 1 of 2, because we do not rely on spell crit too much, but this is just 1.3% spell crit, and I thought this is some really good value and we could pick it up. Then we have Spirit Weapons, a Storm Strike, Static Shock, Shamanistic Rage, Maelstrom Weapon, and Feral Spirit. The Static Shock, obviously it gives us a lot of Lightning Shield stacks and also makes our attacks proc Lightning Shields on the enemy. Shamanistic Rage is just a good defensive cooldown that also regenerates some mana. Feral Spirit is simply overpowered, completely overpowered, so every build that doesn't have Feral Spirits is doing something wrong or has a demon. Storm Strike, yeah, that's just a good dual strike, and it also increases nature damage, which boosts your Lightning Shield procs. In Restoration Shaman we have Healing Way and Riptide, just rounding out our healing with Healing Wave. Then we have in Destruction Warlock we have 1 point in Nether Protection, just to protect ourselves from pesky Shadow Dot builds. In Arms Warrior we have a Second Wind, just additional healing and some rage and Mortal Strike. This is our tool to reduce enemies' healing. Then in Fury Warrior we have Blood Craze, just some additional healing, self-healing. Protection Warrior, we have Warbringer, so we can charge and intercept in combat and without having to use a stance. So let's look at some example damage here. So we have the training dummy over there. Just start hitting. And as you see, the numbers are not very high, but there's a lot of numbers. The fire weapon and life stealing just continuously proc in between the attacks. I mean, the damage are not terrible, like the Wrath procs and the procs from the Axe of the Deep Woods and the Frostbrand are dealing some substantial damage. But yeah, this is more of a defensive build anyway. But this is just the damage that you can expect, a lot of procs. As you look here, we have 29 Frostbrand attacks, melee, Hemorrhage, then we have 6 lightning shields, Storm Strike, then we have 21 life steals and 15 fire weapon. And 4 Wraths. As you see, the proc from the weapons here deal some decent damage too. But yeah, that's about it. That's just this basic build that you can start out when you reach level 60. You don't need any gear. The damage comes from procs, so you just go full out defensive on your talents and you have fun. So that's it, guys. That's the build. If you liked the video, please leave a like and comment, and subscribe if you want to see more videos like this in the future. Otherwise, that's it. After this, as always, I'm gonna play some gameplay that you can watch. But thanks on this point, thanks for all the support and all the nice comments. Hope you enjoyed it. Have a nice one. Bye!
Now let's see what happens when we mix these two elements together. Let's see what happens when we mix these two elements together.